The deal was supposed to be simple, the kind of transaction that Seung-min had overseen 1,000 times before. A signature, a handshake, and the transfer of shipping containers that would quietly disappear into the gray fog of the Incheon docks. But in the underworld, simplicity is often a mask for chaos waiting to breathe. Seung-min, known in the whispered corners of Seoul as the Silent King, sat in the deepest recess of the Onyx Lounge, a VIP room so exclusive that the air itself felt scrubbed of the city's grime. He was a man carved from ice and regret, his heart buried 5 years ago alongside a wife and daughter who had paid the price for his ambition. Since that day, he had become a ghost in a bespoke suit, efficient, lethal, and utterly hollow. Tonight, however, the ghost was bored. Across the table sat, the butcher, a man whose nickname was as subtle as his cologne. The butcher was a sprawling mess of a human being, sweating through his silk shirt, his gold chains clinking with every boisterous laugh. He was talking about cargo and inventory with a wet, hacking cough that made Seung-min's skin crawl. The air conditioning in the room was set to a chill that would make most men shiver, but Seung-min sat perfectly still, his eyes fixed on the condensation sliding down his glass of whiskey. He wasn't listening to the butcher's pitch. He was listening to the silence between the beats of the heavy bass thumping from the club floor below. He was checking the exits in his mind, calculating the angles, waiting for the moment he could leave this suffocating luxury and return to the solitude of his penthouse. He reached for his fountain pen, the gold nib glinting under the crystal chandelier. It was time to end this charade. He would sign the contract, take control of the western routes, and expand the empire he no longer cared about. But as his hand hovered over the paper, he felt it. A touch. A ghost of a sensation against his left ankle. In Seung-min's world, a touch under the table didn't mean flirtation. It meant a wire, a blade, or a bomb. His instincts, honed by a decade of gang warfare, took over instantly. His hand didn't go to the pen, it drifted imperceptibly to the 9mm pistol strapped to his ankle holster. His muscles coiled, ready to flip the heavy marble table and put a bullet between the butcher's eyes. He slowly, deliberately, lowered his gaze, his eyes narrowing as they pierced the shadows beneath the white linen tablecloth. He expected an assassin. He expected a listening device. What he saw stopped his heart cold. Curled into a terrified ball between his polished Italian shoes was a child. A little girl, no older than 6, her skin the color of rich mahogany, her hair a tangle of dark curls that hadn't seen a comb in days. She was wearing a dirty, oversized t-shirt that hung off her bony frame like a shroud. She was trembling so violently that her small teeth were chattering, a tiny, rhythmic sound lost under the noise of the club. But it was her eyes that shattered Seung-min's composure. They were wide, liquid pools of absolute terror, staring up at him not as a savior, but as just another monster in a world full of them. For a moment, time in the VIP room ceased to exist. The butcher's voice faded into a dull drone. The music stopped. All Seung-min could see was the girl. How had she gotten in here? This room was guarded by 3 layers of security. It was impossible. Yet, here she was, a fragile anomaly in a room built for wolves. She didn't scream. She didn't try to run. She simply stared at him, her breath hitching in her chest. Then, she moved. Her hand, small and scarred with fresh scratches, reached out from the darkness. She wasn't reaching for his weapon. She was reaching for him. In her fingers, she clutched a crumpled, grease-stained cocktail napkin. She held it out with the desperate solemnity of a prayer. Seung-min's hand hovered over his gun, then slowly, agonizingly slowly, moved toward her. He took the napkin. The paper was warm from her grip. He brought it up to the table, shielding it from the butcher's view with his broad hand. He unfolded it. It was a crude drawing, done in red wax crayon. Likely stolen from a discarded pack on the floor. It depicted a large, stick-figure man with jagged teeth and a knife. Next to him was a small girl, crying tears that looked like blood. And underneath, written in shaky, uneven block letters that spoke of an education interrupted by tragedy, were 5 words. He is selling me next. Seung-min read the words. He looked at the jagged drawing of the monster. Then, he felt a small tug on his pant leg again. He looked down. The girl was pointing a trembling finger upward, directly at the underside of the table where the butcher sat. The realization hit Seung-min with the force of a physical blow. The cargo. The fresh inventory. The butcher wasn't moving drugs or guns. He was moving people. Children. The revulsion that rose in Seung-min's throat was acrid and burning. He had done terrible things in his life. He had killed men, extorted businesses, and ruled the underworld with an iron fist. But he had a code. Women and children were sacred. They were the line in the sand that separated a gangster from a demon. So, Mr. Lee, the butcher grinned, wiping grease from his chin with the back of his hand. Do we have a deal? The inventory is very versatile. High demand in the West. Especially the exotic ones. Seung-min looked up from the napkin. His face, usually a mask of stoic indifference, had transformed. The indifference was gone. In its place was a darkness so profound, so ancient and violent, that even the air in the room seemed to drop in temperature. He folded the napkin carefully and placed it in his breast pocket, directly over his heart. Exotic, Seung-min repeated, the word tasting like ash in his mouth. Yeah, the butcher laughed, a sound that grated like sandpaper on bone. You know how it is. Supply and demand. Seung-min stood up. He didn't rush. He rose with the fluid grace of an apex predator uncoiling from slumber. He picked up the heavy crystal ashtray from the center of the table. The deal is off, Seung-min whispered. Before the butcher could process the words, Seung-min moved. He swung the crystal ashtray with the force of a sledgehammer. It connected with the butcher's hand, which was resting on the contract. The sound of shattering bone was sickeningly loud, a wet crunch that silenced the room instantly. The butcher screamed. A high, thin wail of agony, but Seung-min was already vaulting over the table. The violence that followed was not a fight, it was an execution of judgment. Seung-min landed on the butcher, driving his knee into the man's chest, cracking ribs like dry twigs. The butcher's bodyguards, stationed by the door, reached for their weapons, but they were slow, sluggish from complacency. Seung-min's men, trained in the brutal discipline of the Silent King, reacted instantly. Phut phut phut. 3 silenced shots garnered from the shadows, and the bodyguards crumpled to the plush carpet before their guns even cleared their holsters. Seung-min didn't look at them. His world had narrowed to the man beneath him. He grabbed the butcher by the lapels of his expensive, sweat-stained shirt and hauled him up, slamming him against the velvet-padded wall. You are selling children? Seung-min asked. His voice wasn't a shout. It was a quiet, deadly hiss. I didn't know. It's just business. The butcher gargled, blood bubbling from his lips. She was just a stowaway. Take her. I don't care. She is not a stowaway, Seung-min snarled, tightening his grip until the butcher's face turned a mottled purple. She is a child. He threw the butcher to the floor. The man tried to crawl away, sobbing, begging for mercy. Seung-min looked down at him with eyes devoid of pity. He delivered a single, precise kick to the man's temple. The butcher went limp, the silence in the room returning with a heavy, suffocating weight. Burn it, Seung-min ordered his men, gesturing to the contract, the briefcase, the entire room. Burn everything he owns. Find his warehouses. Empty them. If there are others, find them. Boss, his lieutenant, Jean, stepped forward, eyeing the dead bodyguards nervously. What about the witness? Seung-min turned his gaze back to the table. He knelt down on one knee, his expensive suit trousers soaking up the spilled whiskey on the floor. He lifted the tablecloth. The girl was pressed against the table leg, her eyes shut tight, her hands clamped over her ears. She was rocking back and forth, a silent melody of trauma. "It is okay," Seung-min said. He spoke in English, the words feeling strange on his tongue. "The monster is sleeping. He won't wake up." The girl opened one eye. She looked at the butcher's motionless form, then back at Seung-min. She saw the blood on Seung-min's knuckles. She saw the destruction. But she didn't recoil. She looked at the gun in his holster, then at his face. In her world, violence was the language of survival. The man who won was the man who could protect her. Seung-min extended his hand. It was a large hand, the back of it covered in the ink of a dragon that wound its way up his wrist. "Come," he said softly. She hesitated for a heartbeat, then reached out. Her hand was so small in his, so fragile that he feared he might crush it. He pulled her gently from under the table. She stood on wobbly legs, barely reaching his waist. She looked up at him, her eyes searching for a lie, but finding only a grim, steely promise. He picked her up. It was an instinct he hadn't used in 5 years. She was light, painfully thin, her ribs pressing against his arm. She flinched at the contact, then, sensing the warmth of his body, she buried her face in the crook of his neck. She smelled of dust and old fear, but underneath that, the sweet, innocent scent of a child. Seung-min walked out of the VIP room, stepping over the wreckage of his former business deal. His men parted like the Red Sea, staring in shock as their ruthless leader carried a dirty, trembling child through the club. He didn't explain. He didn't stop. He walked straight out the back exit, into the cool night air of Seoul, and into the waiting armored sedan. The drive to the penthouse was a blur of city lights and silence. Amora, for that was the name he would later learn, had fallen asleep almost instantly, her body shutting down once the immediate threat of death was removed. She lay curled on the back seat, her head resting on Seung-min's lap. He sat rigidly, afraid to move a muscle, afraid to break the spell. He looked down at her sleeping face, the way her mouth hung slightly open, the way her eyelashes fluttered against her dark skin. He felt a phantom pain in his chest, a memory of his own daughter, Hannah. Hannah had been loud, full of laughter and mischief. This girl was silent, a vessel of trauma. But the weight of her head on his leg felt the same. It felt like responsibility. It felt like a second chance he didn't deserve. When they arrived at the Sky Palace, his fortress of glass and steel overlooking the Han River, the staff was confused. They were used to Seung-min bringing home business partners or lieutenants, not children. "Prepare a room," Seung-min barked at his housekeeper, a stern woman named Mrs. Kim. "Not the guest room. The blue room. The blue room. Hannah's room." It had been sealed for 5 years, a mausoleum of dust and memories. Mrs. Kim's eyes widened, but she didn't argue. She hurried away. Seung-min carried the girl into the living room and placed her on the massive white sofa. The penthouse was cold, stark, a museum of modern art rather than a home. The girl looked tiny against the vastness of the furniture. She woke up as he set her down, her eyes darting around the room, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city lights below, the sheer scale of the wealth. She pulled her knees to her chest, intimidated. "Are you hungry?" Seung-min asked. She stared at him, then nodded slowly. Seung-min realized with a start that he had no food in the house suitable for a human child. His fridge contained protein shakes, premium vodka, and sparkling water. "Jean," he said into his phone. "Get food. Now. Pizza. Chicken. Burgers. Ice cream. Chocolate. All of it. Boss?" Jean asked, confused. "For the prisoner." "For my guest," Seung-min corrected, his voice dropping an octave. "And Jean. Get clothes. Size, small. Pink. And shoes that light up. Don't ask me why. Just do it. An hour later, the coffee table was a chaotic buffet of fast food. Amora ate with a ferocity that broke Seung-min's heart. She devoured slice after slice of pizza, wiping tomato sauce on her arm. Seung-min sat on the floor opposite her, watching her eat, sipping a glass of water. He felt useless. He could dismantle a rival gang in a week, but he didn't know how to talk to a 6-year-old girl who wouldn't speak. When she was finally full, she sat back, her eyelids drooping. She looked at Seung-min's arm. He had rolled up his sleeves, exposing the full length of the dragon tattoo. She reached out a greasy finger and touched the ink. It is a dragon, Seung-min said quietly. In my culture, it brings rain. It brings power. She looked at him, then at the tattoo. She traced the scales. Then, she reached into the pocket of her dirty dress and pulled out the red crayon. She looked at him for permission. Seung-min nodded, extending his hand. She took his hand, the hand that had killed men, and turned it over. On the back of his hand, right over the bruised knuckles, she began to draw. She bit her lip in concentration. When she was finished, she leaned back. It was a flower. A simple, wobbly, red flower. She looked up at him and smiled. It was a small, fragile thing, that smile. It was the first crack in the ice. Seung-min felt tears prick his eyes, a sensation so foreign he almost wiped them away in anger. He realized then that she hadn't spoken a single word. Not when he saved her, not when he fed her. You don't have to speak, Seung-min whispered. I will be your voice. I will be your guardian. The monster is gone. But monsters, Seung-min knew, rarely stayed dead. The butcher was just a middleman. The network he worked for, the syndicate, was a hydra with many heads. And they did not like losing inventory. 2 days later, the war came to them. Seung-min had taken Amora to a private park near the river. It was a secluded spot, technically closed to the public, but Seung-min owned the land. He wanted her to see the sun. She was wearing the new pink coat Jean had bought, and the light-up shoes. She was swinging on the swing set, pushing herself higher and higher, her silent laughter visible in the way her eyes crinkled. Seung-min stood by the slide, feeling ridiculous and terrified. He was scanning the perimeter, his hand hovering near his jacket. He was a father again, and with fatherhood came the paralyzing fear of loss. He saw the glint of sunlight on metal a split second before the crack of the rifle echoed off the nearby buildings. Down! Seung-min roared. He didn't run away from the danger. He ran toward her. He threw himself over her small body, tackling her off the swing and into the dirt just as a bullet shredded the chain where her hand had been. Stay down, he screamed, covering her head with his broad hands. The park erupted. Black SUVs smashed through the chained gates, tires screeching on the pavement. Men in tactical gear poured out, firing automatic weapons. The syndicate had found them. They wanted their property back. Seung-min's bodyguards engaged the attackers, a chaotic firefight erupting in the serene park. Bullets chewed up the grass and pinged off the metal slide. Seung-min grabbed Amora, tucked her under his arm like a rugby ball, and ran. He moved with the desperate speed of a man who has already lost everything once. He fired his pistol with his free hand, taking down a mercenary who blocked their path to the armored car. Close your eyes, he shouted to Amora. Don't look. He didn't want her to see the blood. He didn't want her to see him like this, a killer. But there was no choice. He reached the car, threw the back door open, and shoved her into the footwell. Stay on the floor. Count to 100. Loudly in your head. He slammed the door and jumped into the driver's seat. The car roared to life. He threw it into reverse, slamming into one of the attacking SUVs, spinning it out. He floored the gas, the heavy sedan tearing up the turf as he sped toward the exit. The back window shattered as bullets raked the car, glass raining down on the leather seats, but Amora was safe on the floor. "I got you," Seung-min gritted out, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "I got you." They escaped the ambush, but the message was clear. They weren't safe. Not in the penthouse, not in the park. The syndicate had eyes everywhere. Seung-min drove to a safe house in the old industrial district, a gritty, forgotten part of Seoul where he had started his rise to power. It was a small apartment above a noodle shop. The walls were thin, the floorboards creaked. He carried Amora inside. She was shaking again, the trauma of the park layering over the trauma of the club. "I am sorry," Seung-min said, pacing the small room. "I thought I could protect you." A heavy knock on the door made him spin around, gun raised. "Police," a voice shouted. "Open up. We have a warrant." Seung-min froze. The police? The syndicate didn't use the police. Unless. He checked the security monitor. Outside, the street was filled with patrol cars. And standing at the front was a woman in a gray suit holding a clipboard. "Child Protective Services." "Lee Seung-min," the woman yelled. "We know you have the child. Surrender her immediately. You are being charged with kidnapping." Kidnapping. The syndicate had pulled the ultimate power move. They had bought the politicians. They had bought the law. They were using the system to legally steal Amora back, only to return her to the shipping containers once she was in custody. "No," a tiny, raspy voice whispered. Seung-min turned. Amora was standing by the bed. Her eyes were fierce. "No," she said again. It was the first word she had spoken. She ran to him and grabbed his leg, hugging him tightly. "Appa. Don't let them. Appa. Dad." The word shattered Seung-min. It broke him into 1,000 pieces and reassembled him into something stronger. Something unbreakable. He looked at the door. He couldn't shoot the police. That was a suicide mission that would end with Amora in the system. He had to surrender. But he had to have a plan. "Listen to me," he knelt down, gripping her shoulders. "They are going to take you. But only for a little while. I promise. I will come for you. Do you understand? I am the dragon. I break walls. I burn cities. I will come for you." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Seung-min opened the door. He walked out with his hands up. The police tackled him, cuffing him roughly. The CPS agent snatched Amora away. She screamed, reaching for him, her light-up shoes flashing frantically as she kicked. "Appa! Appa!" The sound of her screaming his name was the fuel for the fire that was about to consume Seoul. Seung-min was in the interrogation room for less than 40 minutes. His lawyer, a shark named Park, arrived with a briefcase of cash and a threat to sue the entire department. But Seung-min didn't care about the law. "Where is she?" Seung-min asked, his voice low. The CPS agent took her to a temporary holding facility by the docks, Park whispered, wiping sweat from his brow. "Seung-min, it's a warehouse. It's not a government building. They are moving her tonight. Get me out." "I'm trying, but the bail hearing is." "I said get me out," Seung-min looked at Park. "Or I will walk out through the wall." Park pulled a string. A corrupt guard accidentally left the back door unlatched during a transfer. Seung-min didn't just walk out, he vanished into the night. 10 minutes later, he was in a black van with Jean and his elite squad. He was gearing up. Kevlar vest. Assault rifle. Combat knife. This wasn't a gang war anymore. This was a rescue mission. "We hit them hard," Seung-min told his men. "No mercy." Anyone holding a weapon dies. Anyone holding the girl lives. Move. The warehouse was a fortress. Mercenaries patrolled the perimeter. But they were expecting a gangster, not a father. Seung-min drove a reinforced truck through the main gate, smashing the barrier to splinters. His men poured out, engaging the mercenaries in a brutal firefight. Seung-min moved through the chaos like a ghost. He didn't stop to shoot, he shot while moving. He cleared the ground floor, stepping over bodies. He reached the upper catwalks. He saw her. Down below, near the loading bay, a group of men were dragging Amora toward a shipping container. The CPS agent was there, counting a stack of cash. Amora! Seung-min roared. He jumped from the catwalk, landing on a stack of crates. He fired, taking down the two men holding her arms. The CPS agent screamed and ran. The leader of the operation, a man in a suit, grabbed Amora and held a gun to her head. Stop! Or I paint the wall with her. Seung-min froze. He was 10 yards away. His aim was perfect, but the risk. Let her go, Seung-min said. Take me. You? The man laughed. The assemblyman wants you dead anyway. Might as well do it now. The assemblyman. The politician pulling the strings. Amora looked at Seung-min. She saw the dragon on his arm. She remembered the crayon drawing. She stomped on the man's foot with all her might. The man flinched. His aim wavered. Bang! Seung-min's bullet struck him squarely in the forehead. He dropped like a stone. Amora ran. Seung-min ran. They collided in the middle of the warehouse floor, Seung-min dropping his rifle to catch her. He lifted her up, burying his face in her hair. She wrapped her arms around his neck, sobbing. I told you, he whispered into her ear. I told you I would come. The war didn't end with bullets. It ended with information. Seung-min raided the office in the warehouse. He found the ledgers. The emails. The videos. The assemblyman, a rising star in Korean politics, was the head of the trafficking ring. Seung-min didn't kill him. That would be too quick. Instead, he sent the files to every major news outlet in the country. He sent them to the international courts. The next morning, the assemblyman was arrested on live television, dragged out of his mansion in handcuffs. The ring was dismantled. The corrupt police were purged. Seung-min sat in his penthouse, watching the news. The room was different now. The cold marble floor was covered in colorful foam mats. There were dolls on the sofa. There were crayon drawings taped to the walls, drawings of dragons, and flowers, and a man holding a little girl's hand. Amora walked in. She was wearing clean pajamas and holding a storybook. She climbed onto the sofa next to him. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Read? She asked. Her voice was getting stronger every day. Seung-min turned off the TV. He picked up the book. It was a fairy tale. Once upon a time, Seung-min began, his voice rough but warm. He glanced at the nightstand. His gun was there, locked in a safe. But he didn't feel the urge to check it. He looked down at his daughter. I love you, Appa, she whispered, her eyes closing. Seung-min kissed the top of her head. I love you too, Amora. The silent king had found his voice. And the monster was gone for good. Let me know your thoughts on the comment section. Thanks for watching. Do remember to hit the subscribe button, like and share this story, and I'll see you in the next one.